Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, June 8th, 2026, and today we're talking summer carrots and what unwanted things can come in with the compost. So let's do it. All right, happy Monday, everyone. I hope you all had lovely weekends. Our kiddos had a soccer tournament out of town. I was not coaching this one, just soccer dadding. It was about an hour away from here, so that was the focus of the weekend, really, and that was a lot of fun. I got a little dehydrated, though, honestly, yesterday. So, yeah, me, the parent on the sideline, not the kids actually running around in the heat. So I'm going to have to take it relatively easy on the farm today, which is not hard to do at all in June. Super easy. Just take a day off. All good, though, as I had a productive week last week with multiple 6-foot-long black snake sightings, so that's cool. So the work is working as it should, I suppose. Of course, I want to see new types of animals and bugs and stuff every year, new birds, new butterflies, snakes, all the things, but I also want to see some returners like that in greater populations of them and long and fat like this one. I should be doing a better job of tracking these things, I guess, but I'm always happy that our farm is a place where things seem to want to live. Farming with life brings life, and that's just always cool to see in action. Anyway, just a little heads up that I will be going live again to do my monthly live show on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern. That's this upcoming Wednesday, June the something. Mike can put it on the screen. So I hope you all will come on over and join me for that. You can bring your questions or your comments or whatever else. We can talk about whatever you all want, and it doesn't have to even be about the World Cup, though, of course, I'll probably mention it. And as always, we would love to know what you all are up to on your farms or gardens. Let us know, or better yet, upload a 20-second farm video clip to Dropbox or Drive and share that with Farmer Mike at no-tillgrowers.com. Always truly the highlight of my week to see what you all have going on. All right, so it is Monday, where every week this year we are digging into a single less talked about crop in a series we're calling Planting and Raving. Today, the crop we're going to plant and rave about is summer carrots. Not because it's less talked about necessarily, but because they can be a little bit more difficult than spring or fall carrots, even if they can sometimes lead into fall carrots, but you get the idea. All right, so I've talked about carrots a lot on here before, actually. There is even an old video that you can watch about our whole carrot production. It's a relatively big crop for us, though I will say that the summer is a tough time to grow any sort of carrot. They also don't have quite the same flavor, i.e. they're not as sweet as like spring or fall carrots. So I think of summer carrots as a slightly different thing than your fall or spring. So what we'll do today is talk about some of the variety considerations when it comes to choosing summer sown and harvested carrots. And then in the third segment, we'll talk about growing and harvesting details as we normally do on our Mondays, if there's anything normal about the show. That work for you all? Rad? All right, so not all spring carrots are great for summer carrots. I find my favorite spring varieties like Napoli or Mokum, at least here in Kentucky Zone 6B, are less reliable in the summer. In particular, I find that they often succumb to rot, stupid clay soil, or even things like the frustrating carrot maggot, and that the tops are a little bit too flimsy in the summer. That makes harvesting really difficult if you want any portion of the greens for marketing or potentially for eating as an herb if you like those. Not bad in a pesto. Even when you are forking them up, those greens can tend to break. And in general, carrots can be reasonably profitable as a crop, but if it takes you all morning to harvest them, then that profitability kind of goes out the window. Therefore, there are a few ways to approach this. Usually, starting in May, I will start sowing longer season carrots alongside the shorter season ones. I've talked about this before, basically sowing them at the same time. Shorter season ones are like your Mokum and Napoli. The longer season ones are like Romance or really any of, those 70 plus day ones. And the longer season ones do tend to handle the heat better, but I sow them at the same time. But that said, being longer season by as much as 20 days in some cases will also be incredibly slow. So you really have to get your soil preparation down. But anyway, we'll talk about that in the third segment. Romance is a variety that comes to mind most readily because it's generally considered heat tolerant and quite flavorful in the summer for a summer carrot. Narvik is another one. I've never said that word out loud. It doesn't even sound like a word, Narvik. But Narvik is another one that comes to mind for the strong tops that make it slightly easier to harvest in the summer than some of the other ones. Yaya is another, that's a fun one to say, is another lovely summer carrot I've grown to fair success in the middle of the summer. Now, all that said, in cooler climates than my own, or maybe in less dense soils, you may be able to get away with those faster crops like Mokum and Napoli, but I've not had quite as much luck. If I did, I would absolutely stick with those because once you get into the 70 plus day maturity range, a lot can go wrong. Weeds, pests, high deer, more pests, high carrot maggot, all sorts of things like that. And that can be a really big loss when you wait over 2 full months for something that does not survive. Now, if you are in a much warmer climate than my own, a perhaps better approach to summer carrots is just more spring carrots. Then those are harvested all at once and stored for distribution throughout the summer. Like if I'm in, I don't know, Texas or something where it is unrelentingly hot in the summer, I'm probably not even bothering with summer grown carrots or probably summer grown much of anything, but rather growing all of my carrots over the winter and then loading my cooler up with the carrots for the summer markets. We occasionally do that anyway if our production is really great in the spring and we're just overloaded with carrots more than we can sell like as we harvest them. We can haul them out and then store them, in lightly breathable totes to sell them over the summer, which I will discuss harvest and storage and all that stuff a little more in segment 3. As for selling, I generally have no issues selling summer carrots, especially at the farmer's market. This is definitely a pile it high and kiss it goodbye crop. It is hard to not sell the carrots. We rarely in the middle of the summer, especially when we were going to the farmer's market, would come home with carrots. That same thing could be said of restaurants and retailers, like they will buy up a lot of carrots, but it's just a different monster selling to them because they can only ever buy so much at any given time, given the amount of walk-in space that they have, like they just don't have room to store them. So if that's the general plan, which it is for us now that we're not doing, the farmer's market, then we have to have a way to store the carrots for several weeks at a time, just in case, or we have to, look for some way to succession plant them, planting either every other week or planting varieties with different days to maturity, like I said, at the same time. That's my preference, honestly, that last one, that sort of lazy man succession planting. Often when you do it that way, the carrots you plant in March and April can be harvested all the way through June, and the carrots that you plant in May and June will get you all the way until the fall. Then the carrots that you plant in like July or August are your fall carrots, and those will go all the way until those first hard frosts. Those are the ones that will sweeten up nicely, especially after those first fall frosts, and then the deer will seek out and destroy the tops because they are also sweet and full of moisture. Anyway, got summer varieties that work for you or don't work for you in the summer? Let us know. And otherwise, we will cover more of the complicated germination stuff in segment 3. But first, we're going to take a quick break and talk about what surprises might be in store for you in the compost delivery. Oh, goody. I love surprises. I think. Do I? BRB. All right, epic ant battle going on. Look at all these ants. They have been fighting for days now, because you can see all these carcasses, and it is everywhere. Who knew my farm was a battlefield?
Today's episode is brought to you by Grown By. Grow smarter with Grown By, the farmer-owned cooperative. Grown By is the platform for online sales of everything: custom and traditional CSAs, halves of beef, flower bouquets, wholesale to restaurants, and now Grown By supports in-person sales too. Their new app, Grown By Register, you can supercharge your market and farm stand, finally bringing together your online and offline sales and customer data. Grown By is proud to make local food accessible by processing SNAP benefits online and in person right within the app. Grown By helps you put your best food forward. Schedule a demo at coop.grownby.com/no-till. That's coop.grownby.com/no-till. All right, back to the show.
A quick and loving reminder that if you, the listener or viewer of this podcast, are getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member Papa John Misty, who writes, quote, "Alarm! I'm having a major concern with our compost we received recently. I noticed small white larvae in the center of the pile when filling a wheelbarrow recently, but didn't think much of it. This morning I found my peas, which were growing in a bed that had been composted, were getting destroyed by a small white larva. It looks like seed corn maggots are doing the damage on the peas, but now my concern is that I introduced seed corn maggots to all of our beds that have been composted. Do you know how likely it is that seed maggots from the compost were seed corn maggots and not like black soldier fly larvae? Also, any tips for dealing with the seed corn maggots? Thanks so much." End quote. All right, so now I'll share what I shared with John here when that question came in, but I'll also just talk in generally about things that can come in with your compost that you should be on the lookout for. What I told John was, well, first, I'd never actually heard of this particular pest coming in on compost, but technically soils high in organic matter can be attractive to the flies, so it's not that crazy to think that a compost pile that's just sitting there for a while might be a sweet, sweet landing site for these corn seed maggots. From what I know and can find online in trusted sources, there's not a ton you can do in terms of treatment, at least not organically. The recommendations seem to be that when the corn seed maggots are present, planting later is a good idea. So if you tend to plant your sweet corn a little bit earlier to try and beat the season, maybe you're planting it a little later, that sort of stuff. And that's kind of it for organic solutions. Faster emergence might also help. So anything you plant or grow, look into, soaking the seed, priming it first, or of course, especially with peas, beans, and corn, which those buggers really like, consider transplanting them to try to outrun the corn seed maggot, or indeed planting them a little later than you normally would to break up the cycle a little bit. It is said that they don't love no-till fields, so perhaps that works in your favor. Also, telling them apart from black soldier fly larvae, or any other larva really, is simply taking a photo of it and comparing it to the photos you can find online if you haven't already, or shoot a couple images to the local entomologist, your local university. They should be able to help you, and if they don't, shame on them. Now, that is an absolutely unfortunate situation if it is corn seed maggots, but it's not uncommon for compost to bring in new problems, which is one of the big reasons I'm always so cautious when it comes to recommending the deep compost or no-dig system. It can be effective, absolutely, or it can be quite tragic. So I'm always trying to make sure to let people know how to look at their composts and investigate them before putting them on their soil. Some other things to be conscious of, beyond apparently larvae, when it comes to compost is first, weed seeds. Our last farm, we had no lamb's quarters until we imported some compost that apparently had been sitting near some lamb's quarters. You may even find roots from nearby Bermuda grass or Johnson grass that has found its way into the compost. That could prove devastating if you spread it all over your gardens. And sometimes there is no obvious sign before it starts to grow in the spring. Seeds, for instance, are obviously almost impossible to see. Like, you can't see a seed in a compost pile. So too are other stowaways like chemical residues such as persistent herbicides. Literally impossible to see with the naked eye, and almost equally impossible to see even with soil tests. The only way to know that they're there, more often than not, is the worst way. You see their presence in your plants with their wilted, stunted look or lack of germination. PFAS could be another issue that is not noticeable. That one is not even noticeable in the plants. It can really only be detected through tests. Ask your county extension about how to do that testing. Compost is an amazing material in that the production of it can kill weed seeds and decompose many chemicals, but at the same time, it can also concentrate many chemicals or things that you don't want, which is why I suggest talking to the composter you buy from and just checking to see, how they mitigate and or avoid, risks, possibly contaminated feedstocks and that stuff, such as paper pulp for PFAS or contaminated straw for persistent herbicides, or just, managing weeds around where the compost is produced for weed seeds and all the rest. Calling them and just asking them what they do to manage that stuff can save your garden. Now, they may not do much to mitigate risks, and I've had composters tell me as much, and they, just honestly, and they almost certainly can't guarantee anything, or at least they won't for liability reasons, but it's good to know that they care. Nerds should buy from nerds, but also buy from people who take their products seriously, who give it a good curing period, and work to avoid contaminants. Anyway, I'm sure we have some horror stories out there, so feel free to put those in the comment section. What have you found in your compost? On the more benign side, we have found, underwear once, which was interesting. I'm not sure why that was in the compost, but I don't judge. Lots of plastics, deworming syringes, lots of fun stuff. So let us know what you found. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, carrots, you say, all summer, you say. I have to see this. Be right back.
Hey guys, love the show. Just wanted to show you my garden, Massachusetts 6A. I've just been covering what I hope to make beds from a past pumpkin patch with straw. Direct sowed some lettuce and cabbage, and I learned the hard way about weed seeds. This is my Three Sisters hills with corn, beans, and squash. Didn't lay enough straw. It needs to be weeded more, but everything's still growing. I have my chicken coop. Hi chickens. I let them out to play throughout the yard. I have what I hope to maybe make into a permaculture garden. Kale, Brussels sprouts, and broccoli are all these yellow flowers that you see, some mullein, and some Johnny jump ups that won't quit, and chamomile. I love it. I'm happy. Have a good day, guys. Love the show. Thank you.
Now, I've talked a bunch about carrot germination over the years because, well, that is often everyone's biggest obstacle to successful carrot production. At least germination is by far what we get the most questions about. Like, my carrots aren't germinating. Why? Well, it really starts with soil preparation. For one, you have to deal with the weeds long before you sow the carrots. Carrots are not a crop that you just till up a plot and, just go ahead and sow the carrots as the first crop. If you're not using a thick layer of compost, which does work pretty well, notably for carrots, though comes with some caveats for summer carrots. But But if you're not using a thick layer of compost that blocks the weeds and are just sowing carrots directly into fresh soil, the weeds have to be in check first. So that could mean a stale seed bedding. Get the bed ready to plant, but don't plant it. Instead, allow for the weeds to germinate, cultivate them out, and then sow the carrots. That's one way. Another way that, again, isn't just a layer of compost is to get the weeds as in check as you possibly can and then use a flame weeder. That's a pretty simple process. Sow the carrots, wait 4 or 5 days, flame weed, and voila, the carrots will come up a couple days later into a weed-free soil, or mostly weed-free soil. Then, of course, the compost layer, even if just a couple inches, makes the whole thing so much easier, except the moisture and the heat part. Compost is dark, so it's therefore warm in the sun and easily dries out. Now, carrots will still germinate at those high temperatures, but depending on the variety, the rates will decline a bit past 77 degrees Fahrenheit, so that's like 25 degrees Celsius. And also, maybe more importantly here, they have to stay moist until they germinate, which can be a full week or more. Like if they get wet and then dry out, your germination rates are going to be toast. In fact, the biggest reason for carrot failure is that it's that dryness during that mid-germination period, which itself is about 5 to 8 day process for them to germinate, even in the summer. In the spring, it can be like 2 full weeks or even a month in the winter. That whole time, they have to stay moist. For that reason, I have a simple strategy for summer carrots. First is that I broad fork the bed. Broad forking helps a ton at harvest time in our clay soils. I find it's easier to broad fork before I plant them than fork at harvest. But for us on clay soils, it's really one or the other. Like, pick your poison, I guess. You have to do one, or it's just hard to harvest them out. Then I prep the soil to get it as weed-free as possible. A light compost layer if I have it, or a tarping is followed. A little alfalfa meal helps in terms of like nutrition, but carrots do dig pretty well for their fertility, so I don't go overboard on fertilizing them, especially if I already did some sort of compost addition that season. Next, I do sow the carrots using the Jang seeder with whatever roller fits the carrot seed the best that I'm using. Some seeds are smaller, and some, like the Bolero, are weirdly enormous. So I just kind of match the roller to the seed size. For the Jang, I set the sprockets on 11 and 11, and I fit up to 9 rows on a 48-inch bed. That's like our width is 4 feet. That's 122 centimeters. But generally closer to 8 rows. I do not plant them too deep either. Carrots are a shallow germinator, so a 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch really tops out. That's where you don't want to go much deeper than that. Though in a mulchy compost, you can probably get away with a little bit deeper. Anyway, then for summer germination, I soak the bed really, really well. I cover it with a tarp to sort of hold that moisture in. White side up, right? I'm not trying to toast them. Or you can use a couple layers of row cover. That can also work. Or you could use something like cardboard. Whatever will hold that moisture in and keep it from getting too hot under there. Finally, I take that off after no more than like 4 days, and I do so in the afternoon before the carrots germinate. I then flame weed that, though if the weeds are in check, I can skip that part. Then I continue to soak the bed until they fully germinate. Usually it takes like 2 more days, so like 7 days, 6 to 7 days in the summer. If the weeds are relatively in check, you can also just wait to see the tiniest little germs under there, like lifting up the plastic or whatever and looking under there, and then pull that tarp or moisture retention stuff off in the evening so that the young sprouts don't have to be like suddenly uncovered from dark and straight into summer sunlight. I don't think anybody wants that, especially not baby carrot plants. And then they just, need steady moisture until harvest. That's pretty much it. Nothing special with the harvesting except that you do want to do that early and with some shade to set them under while you harvest to keep the greens nice, because they will wilt fast in the hot sun. Storing with the greens on is a 3-day thing, really. Like, you don't want to store them a whole lot longer than that. If storing for longer than 3 days with the full greens on, they kind of get wilted. The greens will actually suck the moisture out of the carrot tops. So those greens kind of have to come off. But pro tip for selling, just remove the leafy part of the greens and leave that little bit of stem there, but no leaves. That way it won't really pull that moisture out, and it looks nice. Carrots look better with that little green stem on them, and the longevity stays intact for a couple weeks that way. Long-term carrot storage is a little different. First, you have to remove all the stem entirely. You can't leave any stem on there because it will slowly suck the moisture out or rot. You also have to have an area like a walk-in where you can maintain high humidity and refrigeration temperatures. Then the container itself should be somewhat breathable. For the home, the old school method is things like a layer of moist sand to store them in. You kind of just separate them out. Commercial growers use perforated bags that allow moisture out, but also some breathability. Now, if you can maintain really, really high humidity, you can get away with less covering on the carrots themselves, a little bit more breathability, but that takes a highly managed environment. For us, when we're coming in and out of our walk-in every day, that's not super possible. So we do go with the perforated bags and often inside of bins, and then we just have to check them a lot. However you do choose to store them for that point, make sure the greens are removed entirely because, like I said, they'll rot and cause issues, and you just need to check them a lot. Do you need to wash them before storage? Well, if they're excessively muddy, yes. If they're a little dusty, then probably not. That's kind of up to you, but you do not want to damage them or they will damage their buddies. Last thing, just for emphasis, store them, don't ignore them, meaning you have to regularly check storage crops to make sure they are not becoming storage compost, which is a different thing. One bad apple and all that jazz. Check them once a week if you can and remove the rotters. Anyway, I think that's the lot on carrots. Now, let me know what else I should elaborate on there. Otherwise, we have a Tuesday waiting for us. So, ta-ta Monday. Also, put it in your calendar now that Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern, we're going live. So, get a reminder or whatever. Because I always have people say they missed it. Put it in your reminder. Just saying. Also, don't forget No Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can also put that as a reminder if you wanted. I don't know that anybody do that, but you could. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That is an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor this show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at no-tillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production, help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soul Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of June, you get a shout on the show, but no new signups over the weekend, which is all good. We will start our story tomorrow, given some signups, on a Tilth Tuesday, no less. That should be fun. Thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you then. Bye.
Opening, closing, both of these eyes. There's always a prophet.